Hey guys, and welcome back to Just Ask Jason. This is our weekly devotional Q&A thing here at Berean. Basically, I take whatever questions come up, whatever questions are given to me, and I address them once a week. Occasionally, I'll just answer a common question that hasn't been submitted. This week, we're talking about communion. What is communion? Why do you get these weird little pre-packaged juice and cracker things? Or why does your church pass around those little fake gold plates full of bread and full of juice? And why does your church line up and drink out of a big chalice that the priest gives you? What's up with communion? And so let's be honest, communion is kind of a weird thing. Like, some churches do it quarterly, some do it monthly, some do it weekly. Some churches have an ordained priest that has to be the one to issue it, or it doesn't count, whereas other places don't care so much. Some do it from a big cup, some have an actual loaf of bread, and some churches just have these things here, or something different entirely. A lot of churches have a big wooden altar up front that says, "Do this in remembrance of me." And you have no idea where that quote came from. We'll talk about God dying, which for a lot of us just doesn't make sense. Aren't gods not supposed to die? Isn't that the number one perk of being God is that you don't die? What's up with that? And then the weirdest part of all of it is that at a lot of churches, you'll talk about eating somebody and drinking their blood. And most churches are really bad at explaining why we're talking about this. So on the whole, communion is just really, really weird. So what do we do with it? What's up with communion? Why do churches do it? Where did it come from? Those are the questions we're going to be answering today. So where does communion come from? That's the best place to start. If we want to know what's up with communion, why do we do it, then we should ask the question, where does it come from? And the answer is, it comes from Jesus. Jesus was the first person to do communion, although it didn't quite look like how most churches do it today. They're having a meal, a Jewish celebration, part of a holiday called the Passover meal. And while they're having the Passover meal, Jesus took a loaf of bread and a cup of wine, not grape juice, like actual wine, and he said some really significant words. It's recorded in a few different places, in Matthew 26, Mark 14, and Luke 22, as well as 1 Corinthians 11, 23 through 26. But we're going to read the Luke account because it's just a little bit clearer about what's going on, uses a little bit better descriptors. So Luke chapter 22, 19 through 20 reads, "And when he had taken some bread and given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' And in the same way, he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, 'This cup, which is poured out for you, is the new covenant in my blood.'" So that's all well and good, cool, Jesus did communion first, but he doesn't actually say there that we should keep doing it. He tells his disciples, "Do this act in remembrance of me," but he doesn't say keep doing it after I'm gone. Or maybe he did. We don't know. We know that the early church started picking up on it. And then a follower of Jesus, someone that we call Paul of Tarsus, actually emphasized to the church that they should continue doing communion, taking a little bit of juice or wine, taking a little bit of bread, and taking them together weekly, monthly, whenever they gather, as a way of remembering what happened to Jesus and what he did for us. Now, Paul writes that in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 through 26, if you want to go read that. But it seems that early on, before Paul wrote, Christians actually had some issues agreeing on why they were doing communion. They agreed they should do it, but they didn't know why they were. In the period immediately before Paul wrote, and actually a long period afterwards, because the church wasn't very centralized, there are some disagreements about what exactly the church needed to be believing and saying and teaching about communion. There's an early Christian document a little bit later than the New Testament called the Didache, which translates to the teaching. And it says to celebrate the Eucharist, which is their word for communion, as an act of thanksgiving. But it doesn't say anything about the death of Jesus. But if you read Paul in 1 Corinthians, and he explicitly says, when you do communion, you're doing it because you need to remember that Jesus died for you. It's a way of worshiping and remembering what he did. Well, eventually, Paul won out, as he normally does. And today we continue to celebrate communion as Paul taught us to, as a way of remembering what happened to Jesus, remembering that he died for us. But the Didache did influence us a little bit, and I think for the better, because we don't just do communion as a way of remembering that Jesus died. We also do it as a celebration. And why are we celebrating? What are we celebrating? Well, you have to understand what Christians believe about Jesus first, and what they believe about humankind. This is a really simple version because volumes and volumes and volumes of books have been written on this subject. But essentially, Christians believe that we were all created good, that we were all created perfect, and that at some point human beings decided to sin, decided to do something wrong. And when that happened, we were separated from God. And the only way for us to be reunited with God was for somebody to take away that guiltiness, to take away that wrongdoing, those moral trespasses, those things we did wrong, the things that we call sin. And the only way that God could take away our sin was to become a human being just like us, to live a perfect life, and then to die on our behalf. Because when someone sins, we believe that person is worthy of death. That includes me. It includes you, and it includes everyone who's ever lived, because there's never been a human being that has lived without sinning until Jesus came. Jesus was entirely God, but he was entirely man as well. He was both. So when he died for us, having never sinned, having not deserved to die, he kind of broke the system. He kind of gave a solution to a riddle that didn't have an answer, and he provided us a way to live with God forever if we just believe in him and follow his teachings. That's the basics of what Christians believe. And communion is a way that we remember that. So why do we practice communion? Well, 2 reasons: celebration and gratitude. We celebrate because we believe that if we follow Jesus, we may die physically. In fact, we will die physically. But that our spirits will live on, and that we'll get to spend all of eternity with God. That one day he'll give us new bodies, that one day he'll restore the earth, he'll get rid of disease, he'll get rid of pain, and essentially that we'll live in a utopia with him forever. Also because of gratitude. Because God isn't supposed to die. Like we said before, it's kind of the number one perk of being God. But he chose to anyways. He chose to endure torture, to die through crucifixion. And there's a whole lot of spiritual stuff going on there I don't think we'll ever fully understand. But God chose that because he would rather experience death than live for eternity without us. And so it was an act of gratitude for this self-sacrifice. We take communion each week, each month, each quarter, whenever we decide to take it, as a way of remembering what God did for us. If you've never taken communion, here's kind of what it looks like. You can use crackers and juice. You can use bread and wine. You can use pretty much anything you have on hand that's close enough. God will accept it. We take our items, and the first thing we do is we say thank you to God for dying on our behalf. And we say thank you, something along these lines. Thank you for your body, which was broken for us. And we take the cracker or the bread or the cake or whatever you're using, and we eat it. And then next we say something along the lines of, thank you for your blood, which was shed for us. And then we take the juice or the wine or whatever liquid you're using, and we drink. Usually we'll take some time and we'll pray afterwards, or maybe we'll pray beforehand. Now, there's nothing special about the bread or the cracker or the wine or the juice or whatever you're using. There's nothing magical about it, but it's a way for us to say thank you to God and also to remind ourselves of what makes us Christians. It's not anything that we've done. It's what Jesus has done. And communion is just one way that we remember. Hopefully this video was helpful to you and helped you to understand a little better why Christians do this really weird thing that we call communion. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Go to our website. You can contact us there. You can request more information or assistance, or email us at info@BereanConnect.com. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us here on YouTube, and we'll keep putting out content like this that hopefully is really helpful to you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. I hope you have a wonderful week.